Recently, I just got back from a short trip to Atlanta, and as part of it, I visited a few attractions that could be found in and around the city that I thought would make for an interesting video. I visited the Georgia Aquarium, which is the largest in the Western Hemisphere, and is notable for many extraordinary creatures, but especially whale sharks, which are absolutely surreal to behold in person. I also visited the World of Coca-Cola, literally an interactive museum of propaganda, and Fun Spot Atlanta, which is one of the sketchiest parks I've ever been to, but stands out with Air Force One, its relatively new RMC coaster. While I enjoyed all of these attractions on their own, I did think that putting them all in one video would feel a bit unfocused, and so I decided that it was probably better to cover these attractions individually in a small, unofficial series of shorter videos. That then brings us back to the topic of today, the Georgia Aquarium, which has an incredible collection of animals that you've likely never seen in person, which doesn't just include whale sharks, but also other behemoths like manta rays and even hammerhead sharks as well. There are a ton of interesting and rare animals packed into this experience, which are found in different themed areas, and of the large aquariums I've been to throughout my life, this one never fails to impress through its sheer scale. The origin of the aquarium began when one of the co-founders of the Home Depot, Bernie Marcus, approached an experienced zoo director, Jeff Swanigan, about opening an ambitious aquarium in the middle of Atlanta. Swanigan was actually the CEO of the Florida Aquarium at the time, which is also notable for its scale and quality, which I actually covered in an older video from last year if you're interested. Together, the two went to the state government of Georgia in 2001, proposing a non-profit philanthropic complex, and it was settled that the Coca-Cola Company would donate 9 acres of their own land in central Atlanta, which makes sense since it's only a short walk from the World of Coca-Cola, and the boost in tourism would help both enterprises. The building is deceptively simple for what it hides inside, but the exterior was designed by the Atlanta architecture firm Thompson, Ventulet, Steinbeck & Associates. According to a souvenir book I bought, the exterior was to be simple, as if a blue metal and glass ship was breaking through waves, although I don't necessarily see the intent, even if the shimmering metal scales do look like flowing water. Opening in November of 2005, it was the largest aquarium in the world at the time, although it has since been outclassed in size by aquariums in Asia and the Middle East. It's also worth noting that the aquarium is not just an attractive tourist attraction, but is also a non-profit complex that does a lot of work for marine research and conservation. So now with a little bit of context and a short explanation of the history behind it, let's actually step inside and explore one of the coolest aquariums you can find anywhere throughout the world. Just a quick favor, but if you'd like to support this channel, you can help me out by leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. Once inside, the building opens up into a large atrium, which acts as a hub that directs you to the different themed exhibits. The atrium also features some fun costumed characters, and upstairs, the Coastline Cafe is where you can buy lunch, which I thought was pretty acceptable in its quality. Worth noting is that the dining area also has a great view of Atlanta skyscrapers, so that's a plus as well. I don't think there's any single best way to explore the aquarium, so I'll just cover the exhibits in the order that I did them, but I first started with Predators of the Deep, a long pathway that loops around a pretty sizable tank that has a depth of 20 feet and is 185 feet in length. Its significant size is necessary because inside, the main attraction are the sharks, which is a pretty strong way to start the day. Here you'll encounter a few species of tiger shark, as well as these massive hammerheads. Most people are not likely to ever see these species in person, especially the hammerheads as they tend to avoid human contact, so to view them here really does feel like an opportunity that you won't find elsewhere. On exiting back into the atrium, I next walked through River Scout, a smaller trail that focuses on aquatic life in freshwater rivers throughout the world. It may not be as grand or awe-inspiring as sizable sharks, but there are many highlights here, including Amazon piranhas, a variety of freshwater turtles, and an Asian small-clawed otter, which was hiding in its blankets when I came back to film it. The trail is themed with rockwork and actually often takes you under some tanks that also have crawling tunnels, which is a cool feature. It is divided into 3 sections covering the Americas, Africa, and Asia, which adds quite a nice bit of variety into the experience. Returning to the hub, there are a few interactive experiences, with the newest being Explorer's Cove towards the back, which opened recently this year. You might notice some Animal Crossing characters around here, as the aquarium partnered with Nintendo for an educational exhibit this summer, but this area includes a tank where you can touch sturgeon, which is an experience that I've never seen elsewhere. Moving further back, there is a tank where you can dunk your hand in and graze cow-nose rays as they glide by, and adjacent to this is the Saltwater Marsh, an interactive area where you can play with fountains and water features, or grab at creatures that are projected into the water, which will scatter to avoid you as you reach in. I think the Salt Marsh is mostly meant for really young children, but it's still briefly amusing. Heading back to the atrium and up to the 2nd floor, there is also a pool where you can touch various tropical freshwater rays, which are also distinctive and something that you don't often see. This is completely unrelated, but the rainforest scene of Living with the Land used to actually have a tank with freshwater rays alongside the water, which I can't find any evidence of online, but I do vividly remember was there, so it's cool that you can see and even touch them here. The hub also contains a view into one of the sea lion tanks, which connects to a small area known as Pier 225, leading into a theater where a sea lion show performs throughout the day. I did miss the show, but it was also nice to briefly view the sea lions as they played in the water. Heading into another trail, Coldwater Quest is also decorated and themed to fit various environments, and the theme here is obviously cold water fauna. This ranges from a tank depicting a California kelp forest, to a seascape featuring Japanese spider crab, and many other various interesting animals, such as a giant Pacific octopus, which again, you'll likely never see anywhere other than here. Another highlight is the tank that contains the beluga whales, which I'm personally more familiar with as I've encountered them plenty of times at SeaWorld, but the average person is still very unlikely to have seen one before this point. The theming elements of this trail are also quite prevalent, as in addition to the rockwork, there is a recreation of a whale skeleton. This illustrates a phenomenon known as whale fall, where a deceased whale falls to an immense depth, feeding many deep water organisms. In this section, a nearby tank also contains sea otters, which were also new to me as I've only ever seen North American river otters, and following the trail further in, you'll be able to view them from above the water as well. Across from this is an exhibit that features a few species of Arctic birds, although the highlight is the puffins, which will sometimes briefly dive into the water. It seems like puffins need to fight their buoyancy as they dive, so it's cute to see them flap through the water until they shoot back up to the surface. Heading to the end of Coldwater Quest, you enter Boulder Beach, an exhibit that features African penguins. This particular species of penguin is relatively popular in zoological exhibits throughout Florida, so they're not really new to me, but like one of the freshwater habitats, there's a crawl tunnel which lets you access glass viewing structures that essentially bring you up to eye level with these birds. Having traveled a slow incline up to the 2nd floor, you now re-enter the atrium, where you may spot a small tank that features a pair of electric eel. Moving just past this, you enter a small section known as Gator Crossing, which allows you to look down into one of the freshwater tanks that featured North American fish on the freshwater trail, and traveling further in, a small tank features fish of Georgia mountain streams. However, the main draw is obviously the alligators, and notable here is an albino gator, which is always interesting to see, and I do like how their enclosure is themed as if they're invading a swamp shack, which is mildly amusing. Compared to most of the monstrous gators that you'll see in Florida, these ones appear relatively young and small in size, but considering Atlanta's location, this area of the aquarium is still likely an interesting novelty for most people. If you continue further through Gator Crossing, it leads out into a relatively small but beach-themed area labeled as Dolphin Coast. This contains 2 exhibits, one which features wading birds like spoonbills and ibis, and turning to the right, a large tank allows you to observe bottlenose dolphins. This area does also work as an entrance to a theater which hosts a dolphin show, which is actually really funny, but not because it's good. Heading back out to the second floor of the atrium, it's easy to miss, but there's an exhibit known as Aquanaut Adventure, which takes you through a faux research station, studying organisms that live in harsh environments. This segment of the aquarium contains less animals, but has a wider variety that includes terrariums with reptiles and frogs, and notably, a dark room that contains bioluminescent fish. There's a decent number of tanks to observe as you move through, but towards the end, a window looks out over the top of the massive tank that contains the whale sharks, giving you a glimpse behind the scenes. On exiting Aquanaut Adventure, you move through a corridor decorated with glow paint, which I thought was worth mentioning just because it's cool, then returning you back to the atrium. Heading back downstairs, there's still 2 themed areas to walk through, but the main attraction of the aquarium is Ocean Voyager, which circles around the main tank that I just highlighted from above. Initially, as you walk down, there are a few small windows where you'll mostly see fish, rays, and some smaller sharks. This is one big tank, so you may catch sight of one of the larger creatures, but heading further in and around a bend, the corridor opens up into a massive circular tunnel that runs through a trench. You can either walk through at your own pace, or otherwise stand on a moving belt that takes you slowly through this segment. On reaching the end, another section of the tank has smaller windows that look into different areas, such as the shipwreck where you can spot stingrays taking shelter. Moving through to the end, the corridor opens up into a massive room at the deepest part of the tank, and here, this is where you are most likely to spot the manta rays and whale sharks. Both creatures are unbelievably massive, and despite this, the 2 whale sharks are actually undersized when compared to what you would see in the wild. Still, they have a surreal presence that can't really be conveyed through camera, and while the Georgia Aquarium has many notable rare animals that are difficult to see elsewhere, the whale sharks are absolutely the strongest draw. What's also interesting about this massive 6.3 million gallon tank is that while the animals are free to travel wherever they please, the design of the environment does guide them towards certain areas, leading to the reveal at the end. You could certainly spot the whale sharks or the manta rays gliding above you in the circular tunnel, but you're more likely to see them hazily in the distance, building anticipation for the moment you encounter the largest window. I don't think that most people will really analyze the layout, but you can see that a lot of thought went into the design of the exhibit. On exiting Ocean Voyager, there is one last trail of the aquarium to explore, and heading into Tropical Diver, you'll explore various biomes of tropical oceans. There do seem to be fewer tanks throughout this segment of the aquarium, but you'll explore volcanic shallows, observe fish and eels among a shipwreck, and there's even a pretty large tank simulating a slice of the Pacific Barrier Reef. Moving further in, you'll encounter some small tanks with interesting occupants like peacock mantis shrimp, or the amusing garden eels, poking their heads out of the sand and swaying in the current. Tropical Diver is a bit shorter than some of the other themed exhibits, but it's still a highlight of the aquarium, offering many varied environments and interesting animals among its various tanks. The Georgia Aquarium is massive, not just through containing some of the largest tanks in the Western Hemisphere, but also through the sheer number of varied exhibits that you'll find when walking through. I obviously didn't cover every single animal or tank that can be found, and really, I think that it's probably actually better to leave some surprises if you haven't been here before. While my channel is mostly focused on theme parks and themed entertainment, I do think there is often a lot of crossover with zoos and aquariums, and in the case of the Georgia Aquarium, I thought that it would make for an interesting video. You can see how a lot of thought was put into the design of the themed sections and environments, and the way that they contrast with one another really elevates the overall experience through the variety of the exhibits. Many of its fauna are extremely notable, whether it be the awesome size of the whale sharks and manta rays, or the small but dangerous presence of Pacific jellyfish. I also want to add that their website is very well designed, allowing you to view information on every single animal that they have, which can be searched by the exhibit, the type of animal, or even by color or geographic location. For specific animals, the aquarium also live streams from their exhibits, which is a fun feature and is something that might be exciting for young children. As mentioned earlier in the video as well, the Georgia Aquarium is a non-profit attraction that donates a lot of money towards marine research and conservation, also working with schools to schedule field trips and to provide education programs. Taking this into consideration with the excellent experience that touring the aquarium provides, this is easily one of the best aquariums throughout the United States and even the world, working as a major highlight of visiting Atlanta. Really, I have no negatives other than the dolphin show being a bit too silly, and since it's located right across the plaza from the world of Coca-Cola, both of these attractions can be paired together in the same day, really adding a lot of value to both. I'll definitely be covering the bizarre, propagandistic experience that is the world of Coca-Cola in the next video, so if you enjoy videos on attractions like these that aren't the usual theme park commentary, please do me a favor by hitting the like button if you haven't already. As always, if you have not yet subscribed and hit the bell notification yet either, you can do so now to be alerted to new videos as they're released.